Greetings and welcome to another episode of Trinity Radio. I'm here with Dr.
Jonathan Pritchett.
And I'm Braxton Hunter, and today we're going to be answering the question, why I'm a Hindu. We're not Hindus, but somebody else is.
Right.
Welcome to Trinity Radio with Dr. Braxton Hunter and Professor Jonathan Pritchett.
We're forgiven, we're shown mercy and grace, and our punishments probably aren't as harsh as they should be, even within this lifespan.
Do skeptics bring objections to the case? Of course they do.
What's going on with you today? They just don't like it. They don't like it that God is just and He has every right as creator to do what He wills.
God is the best explanation for the beginning of the universe.
Of now y'all having to look at our faces, which for that I apologize.
All right. We are ready to dive right into this wonderful episode of continuing our theme of why I am and we recently came across a YouTube video of two young folks who said, basically laid out their case of why they are Hindus.
Yeah, and before we get into that, I've been noticing, as I've listened to some other podcasts, that it's popular to talk about what sort of beer you're drinking on a podcast.
Yeah.
And I don't drink beer.
I'm not telling you what this can is.
So I'm happy to tell you that I am sitting here with a something in the Mountain Dew variety. It has a very complex neon yellow hint or tone to it, and there are flecks of some sort of a poison or disinfectant that I can taste if I smell it just right.
Now, I am drinking...
It's been steeped in the cafeteria of our building for, as long as a week, maybe. I don't know. But just so everyone knows, I'm not typically a Mountain Dew snob, but that's what I'm drinking today.
No, this is fancier than Mountain Dew. This is Diet Citrus Drop.
Oh, Diet Citrus Drop. They don't underwrite this program. What are you giving them free
Because it is the
for?
best soft drink I've ever had. And when I came to Evansville, Indiana, there were no Krogers. And this is Big K.
There still are no Krogers.
There still are, but they have what's called a Rulers, who also doesn't underwrite this program, but they sell kind of an outlet stuff for Kroger brand, generic Kroger brand stuff.
Yes.
And this is the only soda that I actually just love. And so all of my students know that I drink Diet Citrus Drop. This is my beverage of choice. This is my craft soda.
Yeah. So I'm not saying we're
Which
snobs.
is an off-brand of what?
Yeah, we're not.
What you're drinking.
Well, it comes from different vineyards, and by vineyards I mean nasty soda factories. But
Right.
but we're not snobs around here. But I'm just saying.
No, I am snobby about this.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is superior. This Mountain Dew knockoff is superior to your Mountain Dew.
All right, so today we are going to be responding to this question. I'll bet you there are not too many podcasts of our ilk that talk about this issue. And honestly, we're not. I have a course here that I teach on major world religions at Trinity.
Very good course, by the way.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it, but I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, not many of your courses are great. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
all of his courses are great.
Well, I don't know if I feel about that, but I have a propensity to re-record ones that I don't think are great.
Right, and they end up great too.
They hopefully end up better through each reincarnation of them.
Yeah.
Until they escape the process of samsara and reach podcast or webinar moksha and are absorbed into the
They
Brahman.
are all listened to a bowl.
So with that really organic segue, we're going to be talking a little bit about Hinduism today. Now, I don't think a lot of people talk about this, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why I suspect that is. It is because there are a lot of different ways that Hinduism looks. There are a lot of variations in individual beliefs, depending on the sect that you are a part of. So really and the reasons that the individuals gave for why they're Hindus here, there may be somewhat better reasons that undergird the reasons that they gave, but all we can really do is go with what they gave.
And what's interesting with this particular video and why it really matters to us more than just giving an overview of Hinduism is, I believe, one was Russian Orthodox and the other was Catholic, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And they converted to Hinduism,
Yeah.
which makes it a thing.
Yeah,
More than just Hinduism on its own, it makes it a thing because people have converted to it.
I didn't see too many Christian apologists explaining what was wrong with Hinduism on YouTube anyway. And all of the like 100% of the comments on this video, we've linked it in the show notes, were positive. Like, oh, how wonderful you found Hinduism, or I found Hinduism too, or you've now exposed me to Hinduism. So again, for those of you that wonder, like, if you click the video and you go listen to what these two kids say, they look like college students.
Yeah.
They look like college students. You're gonna think, why are you guys doing this? Like, why are you going after people like this when there are bound to be scholars that you could be responding to? And again, I want to say, we are trying to do real world apologetics here. We're going to post a link to this in their comments feed, and hopefully they'll see some good reasons why their reasons find their better fruition in Christianity. You'll understand what I mean later. But it's important because they're actually doing a kind of evangelism for Hinduism.
Yeah.
And currently, well, the last numbers I have on my PowerPoint are over 900 million Hindus today. Within the next 50 years, that number may climb to over 1 billion. So most Hindus live in modern India, but they are represented throughout the world, with more than 1 million in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, South Africa, Kenya, the United States, and England. So this is relevant. All right. It may not be something that you think you run into as much in the West, but as we all know, it's as much as we can talk about the secularism that is supposedly on the rise in the West.
That's the least important
Eastern
thing out of all the
Eastern infused thinking is on the rise in the West.
Well, that and just various forms of paganism in all its colors, it will always and forever be outdistance atheism. Still less than 3 to 4% of the culture is atheist. So one of my complaints that you've heard many times is 90% of apologetics is focused on 4% of the population, and that's lopsided, way too lopsided. I think it's not doing the real world apologetics that secularism is a problem. It's not the biggest problem.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right, and we need to address some of these other things. Now, some of you have probably clicked on this because maybe you've been considering Hinduism, or you've heard someone talking about Hinduism, and or maybe you watched the video that these kids had and you saw this video linked, and we're glad that you're here. We hope that you'll subscribe to this channel and become a regular listener as we talk about all kinds of different worldviews and why we think that Christianity is the most intellectually satisfying, the most beautiful expression of faith, and of course we actually think it's objectively true about the nature of reality. So let's talk a little bit about Hinduism. Now again, their reasons they gave don't allow us to talk about some of the undergirding things that we might typically want to talk about. So let's just do a little primer for some of you that may not know. And again, it's hard to nail this to the wall because there are so many sects and things like that.
Yeah.
But neither the term Hindu or Indian is indigenous. These terms were used to talk about people living around a river in northern India, which ancient peoples called the Sindhu River. The river flows out of the Himalayan mountains into the Arabian Sea and then into the Indian Ocean through Pakistan. In the 5th century, now stop not paying attention and listen to me. In the 5th century BC, Persians came into modern Pakistan and thought the natives were calling the inhabitants Hindu because the Sindhu River, they thought they were saying Hindu. In the 4th century BC, Alexander came and thought that the inhabitants were calling the river the Indus and called the natives Indoi, or Indian in English. In 1000 AD, Muslim missionaries arrived on the scene, and because of their knowledge of the Greeks and Persians, called these people Indians and first referred to their religion as Hindu. And then when the British in the 1800s came along, they added the ism to Hindu, thus Hinduism. Thus, we use the term Indian to refer to the race and ethnicity and all the rest, and Hindu to refer to their religion. Now, see, don't ever say we don't teach you anything on Trinity Radio. How about that?
Right.
Now, the important thing that we're interested in, obviously, is the religious side of things. And Hinduism is, at least initially, was the merging, and we still see this, the merging of two different religious groups, the Dravidians and the Aryans. All right. Now, if it sounds like I'm reading from anything, I'm referencing notes that are my own notes on a PowerPoint in the course that I teach. So you're getting something for nothing here. But
if you want to send money because you feel obligated, please, we'll take it.
So the Aryans from the Russian area around 1500 BC came into northern India and began conquering the Dravidians. Ultimately, these two groups intermarried and produced a new cultural and ethnic group we call Indians. The religious blend of these two peoples we now call Hinduism, as I say. Now here's the interesting thing. Here's what these two groups believed. The indigenous Dravidians had not broken society into classes. Have you ever heard about the caste system?
Of course.
Okay, well, it has its roots here. And they were pantheistic, revering their rivers as goddesses and their daughters of the sky father, God, and earth mother. This was a fertility religion. The father was symbolized by male genitalia. I'm trying to keep this PG, folks. And the mother was symbolized by female genitalia as the sky produced rain and the earth received it and brought life. Now, let's just talk for a second about fertility religions. Okay. That wasn't really a great jumping off point.
Right.
Like, tell us what you think about fertility religions, Dr. Pritchett.
They're a dime a dozen.
But well, yeah.
In world history, they're a dime a dozen.
That's an interesting thing. Wonder why that is.
My theory. From a Christian worldview perspective, I think the reason why that came about, of course, in the absence of divine revelation, there is something in the sense of being image bearers. That if your thinking has gone wrong, Romans 1:18 and following, then there is something about childbirth, in general. And there is something about new life, whether you're talking about human life, animal life, plant life in the seasons and all of that, that it does evoke a sense of divinity in us. And if you have no proper object of worship, you are going to take created things and make those things the object of worship in general. And I think that's probably the typical origin for any number of these fertility religions. So.
Sure, like as you look at, just now forget everything you know and put yourself in the perspective of these people, and you're looking at the environment around you. You understand how childbirth happens, so you're at least a 12-year-old. Actually, with animals and stuff, they all probably knew all growing up, but you've got this understanding of how childbirth happens with animals and with human beings, and then you're looking at the crops, and you're thinking about the rain, and you're thinking about all these kinds of things. And so it wouldn't be much of a leap if you've got some religious inkling, as we believe all people do, some sensus divinitatis, as Calvin would say. And so you're looking around and you're thinking, the father, symbolized by male genitalia, and the mother, symbolized by female genitalia, is like the sky producing rain and the earth receiving it and bringing forth life. And then you go a step further and you think, my crops didn't grow well this year. Yeah. God is angry with me. And you get these kind of things. For them, the rivers then were kind of like princesses, it kind of makes, I'm not saying it's true, obviously it's false, but it makes some sense if you're trying to figure it out in a vacuum, right? Now, we believe that general revelation could get you a lot further down the road than that. But that's a different podcast. That's the Bible Bro Down podcast. You can listen to them. This is a good moment for us to say that we are a part of a podcast consortium that is made up of Soteriology 101, Bible Bro Down, and The Narrow Path. So check those out as well. So you got the Dravidians over here on the one hand, and we've described them, a fertility religion and all of that. So let's move on now to the Aryans that merged with them, because in a Hegelian sort of way, this is what like happens with philosophical thought. This happens with people groups and the religions that emerge from them. You get two people groups together and intermarry them, and sometimes you get an intermarriage of the religion as well. The Aryans had an extensive class system. They also had an extensive religious mythology. They were herdsmen, and so they thought of their cattle and livestock as gifts from their gods. Aha! They were polytheistic and called their gods divas. And you know one thing that the Grammys have taught me about a diva is what these Aryans knew as well. They needed to keep these divas happy with sacrifices. So the blending of these two peoples resulted in what is now called Hinduism, quite mistakenly, or as they refer to it, Sanatana Dharma. Yeah. So there you go. In a nutshell, this is the origin. There's a lot more, obviously, that we could say, and I'm sure that people are going to criticize us for this. But
you sign up for our World Religions course with Dr. Braxton Hunter and learn as much as you want. We're only going to be recording for 40 minutes, hopefully. So,
in fact, of the religions that are primarily discussed there, we have a cults class too, but of the religions that are discussed there, which is obviously Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism and Judaism. Someone made fun of me on the video. Apparently, one time I said Buddhism. I thought Buddhism. That's a
Another
religion.
inappropriate thing we want
it's
to embellish.
Well, Buddhism. That's they have their own divas, I'm sure, in Buddhism. But anyway, so you've got of these. I spend more time on Hinduism than I do any of the others.
Yeah.
Partly because I think probably people are less familiar with.
Yeah, and
Hinduism.
it's super complicated too, because I mean, you have number one the whole illusory thing, and then you have the 30 million gods, but one God and 30 million gods.
Yeah, that's an
it's
interesting
very
thing
complicated.
that comes up. You have Hindus who believe in the non-personal force, like the Force in Star Wars.
Yeah.
You have some Hindus who are monotheistic, and then you have some Hindus that are thought of as pantheistic. But I mean, you have some Hindus that are pantheistic,
and
but
polytheistic.
of course, it's a weird kind of pantheism because the world is just an illusion, really.
Yeah.
So do with that what you will. So you've got that, and then of course, if you accuse some Hindus of being polytheistic, they'll say, well, we do have these various gods, but those are just iterations of something else.
And what's interesting is, in a lot of traditions, the law of non-contradiction is not applicable to them. They don't necessarily think in reptilian terms, and so they don't.
It's
they don't have
true.
a problem with that.
If you read a book like Reason for the Hope That Is Within by Michael Murray, what you'll find is that there are some who reject the relativism that you're describing.
Yeah.
However, that is what becomes difficult for some apologists trying to respond to Eastern religions in general, is they claim to have a different way of thinking that doesn't follow Western lines of logic. I'll never forget Ravi Zacharias. I'll probably butcher this, but Ravi Zacharias saying that he was talking with a college professor, and this college professor was saying, you have, in your Western thinking, an either-or way of thinking. We have a both-and way of thinking. And Ravi Zacharias says, so what it sounds like you're telling me is I have to choose between the both-and religion on the one hand, either that, or I have to choose the either-or. So that can become problematic.
Yeah.
Last thing that we need to say in setting this up for the discussion is that there are three things that are very important that have to do with Hindu salvation. And that is the process of samsara, which I referenced earlier when I say that my webinars go through a process of samsara, being reincarnated and reincarnated until they reach moksha. Well, I'm using terminology that those who are familiar with this will understand. Samsara is the process of reincarnation or transmigration of the Atman. I'm not going to talk too much about the Atman, but samsara is an educational progression for the soul as the Atman is realized and known better. So what you've heard is true. You're trying to, you're heading towards something. You're hopefully going to be better by the end of this life than you were at the end of the last life, which will put you in a better spot further down the line in the next life. And ultimately, what's going to affect whether you do better or not is karma. And most people are familiar with karma. It's kind of like the law of cause and effect, good actions and good thoughts, which will lead to a better life after death in the Atman's next life, and the reverse is also true. But what you want to get to, Dr. Pritchett, as you well know, is you want to get to moksha. You want to achieve moksha, M-O-K-S-H-A. And that is the escape, or as they say, graduation from samsara. Some of you Trinity students have been in the program long enough that you feel like you've been stuck in a process of samsara in Dr. Pritchett's classes, and you're hoping to graduate as well. But it is when the true
Try
nature,
being your co-host.
It is when the true nature of the Atman is understood or realized, you get that graduation. Moksha is moksha for them is their salvation.
Yeah.
Okay, so that sets everything up, and now we're finally, after 19 minutes or so, ready to begin. Is that right? Ready to talk about what these characters said on the video. If that sounds like I'm saying something pejoratively, I don't mean to. I don't mean that by characters. These individuals, these wonderful people who we're going to now respond to. Okay. Anything else you have to say, Dr. Pritchett, as we're setting up for the get-go on these comments?
Well, typically for most people, they probably know in their community Hindu families. And one thing you'll notice with so I had some clients who were Hindu, and they're very interesting to talk to. But one of the things you see with that is in America, it's kind of the same thing that you will find with Christian families, where the subsequent generations are less religious than the prior ones. So one of my client families, like the young guy who was on his way to be a dentist, he was going to go learn how to be, study dentistry and get his DDS. And he would go and hang out with us every now and then, like come to get a haircut. And there was a place next door that is Mexican restaurant. He'd eat a beef taco like it was no big deal. Whereas his parents, not so much.
Right.
So you kind of see, I think America.
But he might be concerned for them to see him eat a beef taco because
Right,
they're
he
an
would-
honor shame culture.
Right, and he
as
would
you love
never
to
do
talk
it in
about.
front. Yeah, but he would never do it in front of them. But he was essentially fully Americanized. And so one of the things that I find interesting about Hindus who come over here is with it subsequent. Not now, I know that you're going to find exceptions, but I've noticed just in my experience, the subsequent generations have the same thing that we see in Christian families, where the younger move away from the parents' religion. And so Christianity is not really the only people that are affected by nominalism. And there's something about American culture that just infuses subsequent generations with nominalism as far as whatever their religion is. And Hinduism doesn't get out of that.
Yeah, and another thing we could say in terms of people who may want to interact with Hindus in their community and try to do evangelism toward them, if you're a Christian watching, is that one thing that missionaries often report is that you affirm that Jesus is God is not necessarily, they may appear to you to have become Christians when they haven't. They've just affirmed that, Jesus works fine as a God. In fact, even if you say Jesus is the only God or something like that, they have these bhakti cults where they worship different gods, and you may have a bhakti cult that is a Christian bhakti cult. Yeah. And they may even treat Jesus in that bhakti cult as though he is the only God.
Yeah.
But it would be more, my understanding is it'd be more akin to someone who's a Dallas Cowboys fan saying something like they're the only team. It's not that they actually don't believe there are other teams out there. It's just that from their perspective, this is the only team that matters, right? But so you have these bhakti cults, and you could have a Christian bhakti cult. So you got to be careful to make sure that you make the doctrine of Christianity very clear.
Yeah, and one of the things that we can see with these subsequent generations of nominalism creeping in, these two young people were probably nominal in their Catholicism or Russian Orthodoxy prior to converting to Hinduism. And I've also found that evangelizing the younger folks from the Hinduism who are more nominal are actually easier to evangelize and discuss Christianity with than some of the older ones. And I think so you see that trade-off where nominalism in any religion allows for fluidity from one religion to another because it's easier to evangelize those who are less committed, whether we're talking about Christians like these two transferring over to Hinduism or young Hindus coming to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior.
Good point.
Yeah. So the struggle is real, is what I'm saying, and so this is applicable because what we're going to discuss with these two individuals that we're going to talk about in the video is they are the opposite of what we find that we want to do in our evangelistic efforts. This video is evangelistic. Come from your tradition to ours. And anyone who's from a nominal Christian background like they have may be susceptible to that. In the same way, we Christians celebrate when nominal people who are from Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist families or whatever come to Christianity. We celebrate that, but we don't realize that it happens to our younger generations as well, moving to the others.
Good point to make. All right, so in the video, if you've seen it, you'll see that there's a guy and a girl. And like I said, they look to be college-age students, and they're very excited about it, and you can tell that. And I have jotted down what I saw as the reasons that they gave. If there are more reasons that they gave that I missed, I tried to get them all. Sorry about that. So the first thing that was said was, this is what they both said, why they're Hindus. Helped me with my inner image and outer image. In other words, used to have self-doubt and low self-image. Was self-conscious about physical appearance. Yes. The guy said that he had self-conscious about his pale skin, being skinny, and had acne and stuff like that. And after Hinduism, I realized, this is what they said, I'm not a sinner or guilty, I am divine. and this has made my life more blissful and joyful.
Okay, the first thing I want to say is, how do you go from poor self-esteem? Oh, those are two different things that they were talking about, right?
Kind of, but no, they were mentioned together. And I think you make a good point.
How do you jump from low self-image to
I'm not a sinner and I'm not guilty.
I'm not a sinner and that is a first.
Well, that would play into a poor self-image. It's just one is physical and one is internal.
Yeah, emotional.
Yeah.
I will say this, and maybe we need to do another show on this, but I think that this low self-esteem, self-image problem is a huge problem in the church that our Christian faith does not have a way to talk about and doesn't have enough sufficient resources to handle.
Well, the Christian faith does. The current iteration of the church may not be producing resources.
Well, okay. Because what you will hear is, well, it's not about self-esteem, it's about Christ-esteem. Okay, well, you can say that till you're blue in the face, but if these people are still suffering from self-conscious image problems, and all they are is bombarded from a media that says, you don't look like this, so you don't belong, that's real. And so I understand if there is a way, because the Christian church has failed, in my opinion, at dealing with the cool issue, the issue of attractiveness, the issue of self-image and that kind of thing. And so my heart actually, the non sequitur makes no sense, but I understand the initial concern about their sense of self-worth and self-consciousness about their appearance. I just don't know how they jump from that to...
Yeah, so we want to point out the positive thing, and you're doing a good job at that. The positive thing that you're looking for, and that you think you found in Hinduism. The positive thing that is affirmed is peace and contentment with your physical body, and you want to find a solution to the guilt versus righteousness issue, which is really what's going on. Is there? I seem to have this conflict in me. Whether your guilt is warranted or not, there is some internal conflict about guilt versus perfection or righteousness or whatever on the one hand, and then there's the physical appearance issue on the other. And you're right that there needs to be a solution to find some contentment and peace in the midst of those things is a real human longing, and we affirm that. We think that's
right, because we believe that Jesus is the solution to that.
Right. The negative is that claiming to be divine in order to accept or to get beyond the guilt versus righteousness issue, just to declare that you are divine and to accept everything about you the way you currently are is the
Here's
solution.
Here's the ugly side of that.
That's the negative of it.
Yeah, and it's very it's not just damning in the Christian sense. It's damning for their own soul to view themselves as divine, because what they are saying,
which we understand sounds horrific for us to even utter on a podcast, right? Sure. that you could be damned, right?
Right. But I'm not speaking it. Well, that's true, but it's also damning to their soul in this life, because if you view yourself as the divine, and yourself as your own means of delivery, that leads to arrogance and kind of self-righteousness. That will make you intolerable. That you can rely on your own self. Because it gives you a sense of, because I'm divine, I don't need this guilt and redemption narrative in my life. I don't need anything else, because I can accomplish this for myself. And when you find out that you still have, maybe when you're 19 years old like they are, maybe that will get you by for 6 months, but then you're going to realize that never went away. And after you're done singing How Great Thou Art in the mirror, you're going to realize, no, I'm really not that great. I don't have the power within myself to deliver myself from that sense of guilt or whatever. So it may be good self-delusion for a while, but the problem with giving yourself divine powers to remove that from yourself is that it never works, and I've never seen it work for anybody. Right.
There's a narrative that's going on in our culture today that says, if you feel guilty about something, that's not your fault. You didn't probably actually do anything wrong. Unless, of course, you are a Christian pushing your faith on somebody else. Right. Otherwise, you didn't really do anything wrong. So what we need to do is we need to get you some good counseling for this, help you develop your self-esteem. That may or may not require some medication. And I'm not saying that medication is always a bad thing in counseling and all that. But I'm just saying this is kind of the way we treat your guilt.
Right.
And I'm not saying there's never some speaking to an underlying issue. But sometimes guilt is there for a good reason. As far as your physical appearance, the same can actually be true. It's not true that, and we kind of walk, the culture kind of walks the line on this. Like on the one hand, we present skinny people as, the divas of our day, right? But at the same time, there is this accept yourself for who you are. Well, not if you're unhealthy, right? Not if there are some things that when you look in the mirror at yourself, could indicate to you that that you haven't been living properly. And I think they would agree with that. But the point of it all is that it's not about just a full-blown acceptance of yourself just as you are, and it's certainly not about seeing yourself as God or ignoring your sins.
Yeah, seeing yourself as divine. This kind of self-righteousness of self-divinity, giving yourself divine honors, is always self-destructive, because what they're going to find is, especially at their age as they get older, being Westerners especially, they're not going to be able to carry on that delusion and act like that they can continue to assuage themselves of the things. I've never seen it. I've never seen it successful. And so just dismissing these things as illusory is not an affirmation of anything that's divine or real. It's an affirmation of illusion and delusion.
Yes, and in fact, it may well be, honestly, that if you're concerned, now this is going to sound very counterintuitive, but if you are that concerned about your physical appearance to others, and I understand, man, I was an adolescent once myself, but if you're that concerned about that, you're racking your brain for a joke to make about me right now, I can see it. And if you're that concerned about that sort of thing, it could actually, I'm not saying that if you have acne, it's not a good thing to want to not have acne. That's not what I'm saying. There's a part of caring about your physical appearance that's fine, but what I want to say is if you're that concerned about it, that actually could speak not to you thinking too lowly of yourself. It could actually be you think highly enough of yourself that you don't want, that you're worried what other people are going to think about you.
Yeah.
There's a pride innate to that.
Yeah.
I've got a quote here from Tim Keller. First time Tim Keller's ever been quoted on the website on the podcast, and he says modern people, for example, may come to the Bible looking for answers to the question, how do I build up my self-esteem and feel better about myself? Yet in the biblical passages on sin and repentance, they will discover that the more basic human problem is too high a view of ourselves. We are blind to the depths of our own self-centeredness and overconfident that we have the wisdom to manage our own lives. Now, there is a tension here. There is a balancing act, because you did point out something good, which is we don't want to be too cavalier in what we're about to say that it seems uncaring, because people do have self-image issues that are problematic.
Right, especially physical self-image issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that said, let's bust out some Bible here. Philippians 2:3 says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Part of the biblical message is not you need to just feel good about yourself in and of yourself.
Right.
No. Actually, you need to assume about other people, they're probably better than I am, at least a lot of the time.
Kind of hard
right?
to do when you're God.
Right.
When you're divine.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that would be hard to do if you're divine, right?
Because then if everyone is divinized or whatever, then you're back to square one.
Right. Yeah.
Now
it's just like the problem Star Wars is creating by
Yeah.
every single character is a nobody who turns out to be a Messiah figure.
Right.
Well, if everyone is a nobody who becomes a Messiah figure,
Then that's the common.
Messiah figures aren't that impressive anymore.
Right. That's the new normal. So you can't escape it, because all you've done is you've just elevated to the next level, and then all of a sudden you're back to square one. So.
Yeah. Philippians 4:13, there's a bunch of passages here that show you how you should feel good about yourself. And you kind of, it is biblical truth, right? The way you feel good about you is to feel good about what God is doing through you. Not that you're God. That stops short and is a truncated and not at all satisfying expression of the nature of reality.
Very self-righteous and self-centered.
Yeah. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things in him who strengthens me, right? Psalm 28:76 says, the Lord is my strength and my shield. 1 Corinthians 25:10 says, by the grace of God, I am what I am. Psalm 62:5-6, only God gives inward peace. and I depend on him. God alone is the mighty rock that keeps me safe, and he is the fortress where I feel secure. 2 Timothy 1:7, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. 1 Peter 2:9, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession. These are things that he did for you.
Right, but here's the thing. What they're going to say is, but that's your Bible, and that works for you.
Yeah, that's
but
absolutely
you don't
right.
need that because it's within you, because you're divine. Why don't you come to my Hinduism?
Well, that's true. I am applying Christian thinking to this in an effort to show that what they really want, what they're really seeking for, is good.
Yeah.
Is good. It's just that Christianity, I think, satisfies it in a much more intellectually beautiful and realistic way. And in the following way. In the last episode, we talked about how morality can't have a foundation in and of itself.
Yeah.
That morality, that foundation needs to be ontologically in God's necessary nature, right?
Yeah.
And in the same way, but if you've got a personal maker, all of reality finds its home in God's nature. So it makes more sense to point to him and say it's because of him I have all these things. Yeah. Because honestly, it's not even that compelling for us to look at each other and say that. To look at you and say, you have no shortcomings, you have no sins, you and yourself are divine, Jonathan Pritchett. I mean, I know that's what you think about yourself,
no.
Whether you say it or not. There has to be a grounding for it. In other words, outside of you yourself, we find that grounding in God. That to me is more intellectually satisfying, and it makes all these scriptures then resonate.
Right, because you should actually, and in fact, our createdness and our humanness. I know that if you spend too much time in worm anthropology and systematics, you're not going to see this. But humanity was worthy enough to actually be celebrated by Jesus to come down and live as a human being. So even though we're all horrible sinners, and we can go into worm theology as well, we also need to see the very goodness that God declared humanity, that it was worth saving for Jesus Christ to identify with humanity by becoming a part of it and ennobling human endeavor. Once you get away from that and move yourself up to another Jesus, or you're a divine man or you're a divine woman or whatever, you've removed all the romance from that, and you've made humanity in our image bearingness, our image of God that we have. You've made that less than the very good thing that it was, because it was never good enough for you, and you wanted to. Unlike Jesus, you saw that equality with God was something to grasp. Mm-hmm. And that's ugly to me, because what Jesus did, when you read in Philippians 2, where he did not see that as worthy to be grasped, but humbled himself, taking the form of a servant. That, and we are to imitate that. That's beautiful to me. But this self-divinity thing, number one, by what authority or what epistemological rule of discovery have you come to make that claim about yourself?
And they do have something, some source of information. That'll be the last thing that we'll get to. But to cap off this point number one, the positive is that you're looking for peace and contentment. Yeah. And we affirm that. We think that's a good thing you're searching for. The negative is you're not going to just find it in and of yourself by affirming yourself divine and all that sort of thing. What will get you there is recognizing that there's a moral lawgiver and aligning yourself with his moral code.
Right, and repenting and believing in the gospel.
That will get you, yes. And all right, so the second thing was it affirms divine feminine energy. I was able to celebrate myself as a woman, the woman said. Yeah. And I was able to embrace a divine mother, the man said, in a culture that speaks negatively about women. It's not a direct quote, but that's basically what they said. I hope that's fair. Now, the positive I see in this is an appreciation for femininity if you're a man, and an appreciation for your valued position as a feminine entity or being if you're a woman. I thank God for women. I love women. I love my wife, and I loved her when she was 20 years old. I love her now that she's 37 years old. And if we've lived long enough, then I plan to be in love with her when she's a little old lady. So I have loved a young woman. I love her now, and I will love an older woman. I love women, and I I really do love femininity. I recently read Paralandra, and I know this is going to upset certain people in our crowd, but the second in C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy, and now I'm on to reading a book on heaven by Jerry Wallace, so that's really going to upset some people. But in between, I read Tim Keller, so pipe down.
But that's going to upset it. You're
the nature of the books I read. But Paralandra...
You're a scholar. You're supposed to read everything.
But Paralandra is so wonderful because he pictures femininity in one of the principal characters in a way that I imagined them intuitively when I was a young boy. I thought of women as these otherworldly, almost divine. Now I realize what I was noticing in them was a divine beauty, the mark of the Creator, because they are image bearers too. I saw something beautiful in her, and Lewis captured it so well in this green lady that's there throughout the entirety of the book, and I saw that. I affirm this feminine quality, but so that's a positive thing.
Yes, and I agree with her that culture denigrates women. It has been so denigrated by secularists that it's so non-special that men can do it, right? And then we'll reward the man who does it better than women and make men the women of the year. Right. We so not care. The secular culture denigrates women. It objectifies women. Mm-hmm. It denigrates women. It makes femininity something to not aspire to. When you look at the third wave feminism, what they want an odd gender. They just want number one. None of
just perfect androgyny.
Androgyny, yeah. They just don't. They just don't want the idea of gender. Or if they do, they want to look more like me than like girls. And otherwise, what could have been attractive women become overweight lesbians with bad haircuts. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just saying that's what you end up with. And so sometimes you hear that it's Christianity that denigrates women, but it isn't. Christianity celebrates women, celebrates womanhood. We see womanhood, like manhood, as male and female. He created them in His image.
And in the meantime, while we're on our way to that perfect androgyny, what we're doing is we're saying to women, you are being treated as sexual objects. You need to stop that and go be sexual objects, so that you're not treated that way. I don't. It's hard to imagine.
So I affirm her problem with. Now she may be thinking different. She may be thinking that well, y'all are Christians, so it's all about the patriarchy, whatever. But that's really not what denigrates women. That might do it some in a bad way, in the bad sense. But it's really secular culture that denigrates women. So if she's this person in this, and these two people are thinking along the same lines I am, secular culture, I understand wanting to get away from that. But Christianity has a place where we celebrate womanhood.
Yeah.
As distinct from manhood.
Yeah, and I think you've put this really nicely, but I have a quote here, if you'll forgive me and let me read it, from philosopher J. Budziszewski, from a book that I read on the meaning of sex, which I recommend to everyone, on the meaning of sex. It's not really just about sexuality in the mechanical sense of the term. It's about masculinity and femininity and all that. And here's what he says. When all goes well, fathers and mothers also exemplify and specialize in different aspects of wisdom. A wise father teaches his wife and family that in order to love, you must be strong. A wise mother teaches her husband and family that in order to be strong, you must love. She knows that even boldness needs humility. He knows that even humility needs to be bold. He is an animate symbol to his children of that justice which is tempered by mercy. She is a living emblem of that mercy which is tempered by justice. Each of them refracts a different hue from the glowing light of royalty. A wise father knows when to say, ask your mother. A wise mother knows when to say, ask your father. And when they do this, they are not passing the buck, but sharing sovereignty. Isn't that powerful? But then, here's what he says what the culture has done to this. He says, we have turned husbands and wives into androgynous spouses, quote unquote, just spouses. You're not husband and wife, you're just spouses. Fathers and mothers into interchangeable parent figures. We approach having a child like acquiring a pool table or a widescreen TV. Wouldn't it be fun? Would it be tedious? Would it be worth the expense? Fathers and mothers have need of recovering their sense of regal calling, taking up their ball and scepter, and ruling their dominions with love for the precious subjects. Now that, to me, I know how that sounds.
Yeah.
those prose sound to a secular or skeptical or just non-Christian modern society barbaric, but it's not. It's beautiful. And I'm sorry, there are recognizable traits of masculinity and femininity, and when you lose those, you end up with what Dr. Pritchett and Dr. Bud Ziszewski have elucidated, which is just this unsatisfying middle.
Yeah, a blob.
Now, what they could do to understand...
Here's what I want
ahead.
you to do. Here's what I want you to do on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
What I want you to do is I want you to walk up to Sarah and say, spouse.
Yeah, right.
Here is not chocolates for you,
Yeah.
spouse.
Yeah.
How wonderful our arrangement is.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, or now it's just partner. Well, that sounds a little better, I guess.
Right, yeah.
Partner.
Yeah,
But at least
it's-
we're in this mediocre existence together. We're
Right.
partners, right?
I mean, you have sucked all the, you know.
If you want a good equality, if you want to see a high value for women, you know what you should. I don't understand why people don't do. Just look to the Old Testament. The Old Testament has such a great example of value for women. Did you ever think about that? Did you know that? I'm not going to go off on another reading tangent again, but Genesis 1:27, God created man in His own image. In the image of God created him, male and female He created them.
Yes.
Genesis 2:24. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and be joined to. Is that what it says? No. Leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become. Exodus 20:12. Honor your father that your honor your father and your mother that your days may be prolonged. I have a litany of passages here that goes on for half a page where mother is set next to father.
Absolutely.
In a situation of equality.
Yeah, and the young man is to leave his father and mother eventually and go cling to his independent wife.
Right.
Right. Get out of your parents' basement.
Yeah.
And go with the independent woman who's never said to leave her father. She stands on her own. And
Right.
His wife.
Now, here's the negative,
Quit
is that
being-
femininity in and of itself is neither a good nor a bad thing unless it is a part of a holistic design in the eyes of a maker. You know, it's not just like, it's just a thing.
It is.
Yeah. But if you've got a personal maker
Yeah.
that sees that personally designed this to represent who he was to the world,
Yeah.
well, now it's actually not so bleak. It's beautiful.
But yeah, so you have nothing in Hinduism that underwrites femininity at all.
What will get you there is that femininity nor masculinity are aspects of you that should engender pride in yourself on their own, but part of God's design that should engender praise toward Him.
Amen.
Right? Okay, now I don't have as lengthy a notes on the rest of these, okay? So just calm down.
Good, because time
right?
is...
Okay. Okay, number 3, huge emphasis on context, he says, as to why you're doing particular things and particular physical elements in worship. Hinduism answered the why questions for him. Okay? There's a positive in that. There's something good that you're looking for there. And that is that the positive is that there should be reasonable answers to why we do what we do in worship.
Yes.
Right? There should be, or anything about your faith. There should be some reasonable answers or impressions. Right? 1 Peter 3:15, be ready and willing always to give an answer to anyone who asks you a reason for the hope that's in you. Right? There should be answers. Asking the question why is a wonderful thing.
I agree.
You have anything to add to that?
Well, unless they're your kids asking why after every statement you make.
I said before I have kids, because of this very thing, that I was always going to give them an answer. Do you know how often now I've said, just do what I tell you? You know, this happens a lot. But in general, we do have a relationship with our kids that I have with my parents, which is, no, you ask me why, I'll tell you why. If I can, I'll tell you why. Okay? So the negative is that answers themselves are not enough. So it gives me answers. Well, okay. What is the content of those answers? Now
Every worldview system has answers. Are they
Right.
good answers?
Right, and in fairness, maybe you did another video somewhere on that. But answers in and of themselves are not enough. Christianity gives you answers too. What will get you there is an internally defensible and historically vindicated worldview that has plausible answers, plausible in history and philosophy and science, plausibly meaning more likely to be true than false.
Right.
And Christianity has all those things. It's internally defensible. Just check out the rest of our YouTube channel if you want to find out. It's historically vindicated in the resurrection of Jesus. If you don't think that's good, just listen to the rest of our channel. And it's a worldview that has plausible answers. The answers that are given are more likely to be true than false, although that would require the rest of our YouTube channel. right? Okay, so let's move on to number 4. What we do is not based on faith, but science. The science of awakening, how we treat our bodies matters. Now, again, I'm not quoting them directly, but this is pretty well it. And if they take objection to how I'm quoting them, I'm really trying to be hospitable to exactly what they said. And you can go look at the video and see if I was. So it's a science, they want to say. It's not even so much a religion as it is a science. It's the science of awakening, and how we treat our bodies matters. Now, I'm going to help them out a little bit, Dr. Pritchett, and say that it's not really just that they want to say that how you treat your body matters. But actually, there is a movement that says that Hinduism really sets well or pairs well with modern scientific theory. Not just in that you ought to take care of your physical body. A lot of religions say that. But also insofar as we're now approaching a time where, we're in the midst of a time where cosmologists are trying to put forth the theory of a multiverse and an infinite past, a past infinite universe. And Hinduism says that the universe is a series of cycles, just like the cycle of reincarnation. It's just over and over, and there is no beginning. It's past infinite.
Well, you can just go to Nietzsche for that. You don't need Hinduism. The eternal return. I mean, you can. Anyway, I don't. Okay, so you have a cosmology.
The negative is that the scientific theories I'm aware of are false. Like, okay, it's okay. Of course, you should take care of your body, right? That's not really an evidential,
But on Hinduism, I want to know why.
Yeah, why not go on to the next phase of
samsara?
Is that what you're saying?
Well, even dealing with the problem of evil and suffering, right? In Hinduism, well, it's not real.
Right. It's an illusion.
If you become extremely obese where you can't get off the couch and you're a Hindu, where's the motivation in that?
Well, you're not going to do well in the next phase of samsara. Would probably be the thing. But that's an illusion too. That's a good thing to go to.
Yeah.
We're supposed to recognize that there is only one reality and all this is an illusion, and there are no distinctions.
Right.
Okay, if there's an illusion, that's a distinction from the one real reality, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I say I had a dream last night, that's saying I had a conscious state that was distinct from my waking state. The illusion is a distinction, and this is a thing that's brought out in Reason for the Hope That's In with Michael Murray, I was just noticing a while ago. So there's problems with that. The past eternal universe has a serious problem. Anyone who's familiar with the Kalam cosmological argument and the responses to objections to it, premise 2, the universe began to exist. One of the objections is no, the universe is past eternal, and that's not possible. You can't have a past eternal universe. They say, well, science says this and that and the other. Okay, well, science is not the be-all, end-all, not sound like Dr. Pritchett, but there is also philosophy, and there is also theology, but let's just go with philosophy.
And no scientific physical evidence for anything that you're talking about. It's just creative math.
Right. In fact, scientific evidence to the opposite. It looks like the universe is in a state of expansion. If it's in a state of expansion, it's expanding from a point. Now, you could say, well, like it's a collapse and expand and collapse and expand, but here's the problem. Time can't be infinite into the past throughout these universes.
Or you can never arrive to the present.
You can never arrive at the present because you have to cross an infinite number of events or points in time to get to where we are right now. And you can't cross an actual infinite number of things. This would take a whole episode to talk about, so let's just put it this way. Try jumping out of a hole that there's no bottom to. You can't, right? It can't be done. So how would you? Or let's
see if all apologists would just get to the point. There you go. So this is what being a preacher helps you with illustrations.
Right. Actually, I think that's J.P. Moreland's illustration. But I give you another illustration. Books on. Let's say you had a library, an infinite library with infinite books, and every other book was red and every other book was black. All right, and you're trying to move through the library to get to the end of the infinite bookshelf. And let's say you took out all the black books. And of the infinite books. How many books are left?
An infinite
number of books, and you'll never get to the end. Right. Take half of those red books of the infinite numbers of books. Now, how many have you got left?
An infinite.
Infinite. Okay, you'll never get to the end. And this is why if you say the past is infinite, you never would have gotten here. Okay, hopefully that was clear enough. So that right there blows the lid off of a big chunk of this. But let's move on to the next. But you should be healthy. And the positive there is that you want faith to make sense of science. The negative is that some of the scientific theories that Hinduism doesn't actually pair well with some of the scientific things.
Absolutely not. But there's an even bigger problem. Hinduism can give no account for why. It's the same thing that we talked about the last few episodes, or the first episode. What is your account for why science is possible and the comprehensibility of the universe when, number one, Hinduism is incomprehensible, but number two, the worldview cannot give an account for the intelligibility of the cosmos the way that Christian can.
Right.
Because Christianity has the intelligibility of the cosmos originating in a single divine mind, and guess what? That ain't these two kids.
Which is why...
If they're still trying to figure stuff out, it didn't originate from them.
Right, and so that's why I ended that point with what will get you there, that positive that you want?
Christianity.
Well, a worldview that does make sense of the most plausible scientific and philosophical theories. And check out the rest of our YouTube channel. All right, number 5. The lineage of enlightened masters exists in an unbroken chain stretching back thousands of years. Now, there are people that believe within Christianity who believe in an apostolic succession that stretches all the way back to the apostles. Now, we're not in that in that group, but
I don't care that other people have it, but
right, it's not a big deal.
I don't care about apostolic succession, but we don't.
If that helps you become a Christian, we're all for it.
Right, but it's not our thing. But there is a 2,000-year history of successive red-faced, loudmouth, leather-lunged preachers who have been proclaiming the gospel.
Right. The positive is that you appreciate the idea of consistent teaching. That is great. That is great. The negative is that you have no certainty that the source of these teachings is reliable.
Yes.
Right? Even if we granted that you had what Hinduism says in one of its sects today is exactly what was said in the beginning, even though we told you how it began, even if you had exactly that, it still wouldn't mean that it necessarily is true, right? With a capital T, which is important.
And you could say that about Christianity, but there's a lot of evidence.
But we've got lots of evidence. I can think of 5 or 6 theistic arguments and the resurrection cases of about 4 or 5 different historians and philosophers.
And the reliability and the documented evidence.
The documents. We know we pretty well know
we're spoiled.
The message that we have today is the message that they had in the first century.
Yeah.
Okay, and we actually can go back further than that, Dead Sea Scrolls and everything else. So I mean, we have what you're looking for. If that's what you're looking for, we got it in spades.
Yeah.
You know?
Christians do a bad job of discussing the historical pedigree of Christianity, and especially Protestant traditions are like, well, Christianity started in the first century and then skipped 1,500 years to the Reformation with Luther and then started back up again. That kind of stupid thinking that evades popular Protestantism is unfortunate. Sure. And so we need to do a better job of educating people about the historic faith.
Yeah.
You know, and the historical pedigree of the faith.
Yeah, people don't know the history of the Christian faith like they should. Christians don't.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't.
Yeah.
You know, but moreover, and people say, well, you know, our megachurch gets Catholic converts all the time, but we've also seen that those who do emphasize the historical faith in the Eastern Orthodox or the Catholic Church, we see Protestants moving over there to those things because they do a good job of at least historically grounding it better than Protestants do.
Now, one thing that we should have said at the beginning that we'll say here as we're coming to the end, because that's the last of their objection, or their reasons rather, is I really liked these kids. They seem really happy and likable.
They seem more excited about being Hindus than a lot of youth and college and career class guys seem to be excited about their Christian faith.
You can be sincere in your faith and be sincerely wrong.
Right, and certainly that.
Right, like there are a lot of people who are atheists who, at least for a while, are really happy that no one's looking over their shoulder, so to speak. You know, the fact that your religion seems to even make you a better person. You know, I've heard people who are not apologists say, "Well, but my faith made me a better person. Christianity makes you a better person. This guy got saved, and then look how much better he was afterwards." I'm glad for that, and I do think Christianity can do that for you. But
that's not the point.
Hindus can say that. Some Muslims can say that.
Right.
That you started following some moral teachings and seemed to be better. Your life was better for it. Yeah. Actually, Christianity answers that well.
That's not the main issue. The main issue is a separation from God because of sin. And moral improvement for Christianity is secondary to the salvation of your soul so that then you get into sanctification, which is what the technical term for moral improvement for Christians.
Yeah.
Even though it's more than that. But moral improvement in and of itself cannot save you to anything. And it cannot even solve all of your problems. And part of the thing about Christianity allowing us to thank our Savior for saving us so that we can move on to sanctification to be more like Jesus is that our moral improvement is not something we pat ourselves on the back for. It's something we give thanks to God for working that into our lives by His Holy Spirit.
So to cap it all off, it all comes back to Jesus, really.
Yes.
Now we've said things, we've talked about the evidential and all that kind of thing, but honestly, for Christianity, it all ties up in the person of the Lord Jesus Christ. You're worried about your self-image and where you stand, and as far as that goes, you're gonna have that as a recurring problem throughout your life. I don't care what guru you go to. I don't care what medication you put yourself on. I don't care what teaching you follow. At some point, as you begin to get older, you're gonna have issues with yourself. And fortunately, we can point to a Jesus who conquers things for us, and in
Amen.
Him we find our worth, and in Him we find our value. You worried about the divine feminine and how the world doesn't place the correct value on the divine, on femininity? Well, how about knowing the person who created us, created women as part of the image of God itself, men and women together, as image bearers, and really affirming the femininity as meaningful.
It has a mutually affirming manhood.
Masculinity and femininity, yeah.
So
One answer to your questions, the why questions, just read the Gospels and see how Jesus revealed who He was. He revealed it with miracles. He talked about who He was and where He came from, that He came from the Father. And then the New Testament is just chock full of evidential talk and showing why you should believe these things are true. Talking about mixing well with science. I guarantee you there's just so much more literature for defending Christianity in this regard, and it's satisfying. Now, not all of it's there's bad Christian authors out there.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing thing that the Christianity that we believe in is so defensible today. And then in terms of knowing that what we have today is what was taught before, you're right. You said it well. We have a history of leather-lunged, loudmouth, red-faced preachers who really believe this, trying to tell you this book that we're talking about, this person that we're presenting to you, is God Himself who came in the flesh and dwelt among us. Amen. So that you can know Him and be a part of that too. How do you do that? Well, I don't want to sound hokey. If it sounds hokey, I'm sorry to tell you, it is that teaching that has survived. You repent. That means to turn from the way you've been living without Jesus, turn to a life with Jesus, turn from all other gods, turn from any hope of any other gods.
turn away from thinking yourself as God.
And turn to Him in humility and saying, I do have guilt. I'm not perfect. But I'm coming to You because You can make me whole. That's the solution. And we invite you to do that. We invite you to contact us and tell us about it. And we'd invite other people to come and become students at Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary. Just today we had an 18-year-old young man came in and talked with us, had lunch with us, and Dr. Elliott bought us all lunch.
Oh, isn't that
and
wonderful?
talked about all these things. You can talk to us about enrolling in whatever program and take courses on major world religions and cults and whatever you want. Systematic theology, it's all fun. Pastoral ministry, I actually do some good with this stuff. And counseling and things like that. And we'd love to talk to you about that. Contact us at TrinitySem.edu, TrinitySem.edu. Also, again, check out our sister podcast, Soteriology 101 with Leighton Flowers, Bible Bro Down with Matthew Chisholm and Billy Wendelin, and Steve Gregg's The Narrow Path. You'll be blessed with those programs. And come back to us. Hey, if you're a listener on the audio version, go over to the YouTube channel and click subscribe and maybe leave a comment and give us a little thumbs up. Man, it doesn't cost you anything, but it does help us out. And go over to, if you really want to go the extra mile and escape the podcast samsara that you're stuck in, go over to iTunes and give us a review on iTunes if you want to review us well. If you don't want to review us well, just please don't do that. But go over there and do that. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on
Trinity Radio.
Honey,